Think about that moment when something just throws you completely off course.
Yeah.
It could be, a personal setback, professional hurdle, maybe something that just feels like it's going to break you.
Right. We've all been there.
But then somehow you find a way forward. Sometimes it's a real struggle. Sometimes you actually come out the other side, stronger.
Yep.
That inherent human capacity to not just bounce back, but maybe even grow when facing adversity. That's our focus today, human resilience.
And you've given us a really compelling set of sources for this. Everything from how AI is trying to analyze resilience to, deeply moving historical accounts and some really thought-provoking and philosophical ideas.
Yeah, quite a range.
So our aim really is to dig into this material, pull out the most important insights, maybe those surprising facts that give us a richer, more, let's say, nuanced understanding of what it means to be resilient.
Absolutely. We're trying to look at resilience from, all angles, what's happening in our minds, our bodies, how it plays out in communities across different cultures, and even how something like artificial intelligence tries to, wrap its digital mind around it.
It's a big topic.
It is. And believe me, there are some fascinating connections and unexpected angles in this material. Could you have guessed that our genes might influence our resilience almost as much as our environment does?
It's pretty striking.
Or that the very way a culture defines well-being actually shapes how its people cope with hardship? We're going to explore all of that and, see what truly stands out.
Okay, let's dive in.
Let's really get into this.
So maybe starting with the basics. At its core, what are we even talking about when we say resilience?
Good question. Where do we start?
Well, our sources offer several ways to think about it. From a psychological view, it's really about how we adapt to stressful or traumatic experiences and, crucially, maintain our overall well-being.
So the bounce back idea.
That's part of it, yeah. That ability to recover. But what's interesting is the idea that it's not some static quality you either have or don't have.
Ah, okay.
It's more like a muscle, maybe.
Yeah.
Something that can be developed through our thoughts, our behaviors, how we choose to act.
Learnable, then.
Exactly. And some research even points to something called post-traumatic growth.
Growth after trauma. That sounds counterintuitive.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But it suggests individuals can experience positive psychological changes because of struggling with adversity.
Yeah.
One model actually suggests 5 key elements contributing to this. Things like gratitude, compassion, acceptance, finding meaning, and practicing forgiveness. So it's less about just, enduring passively.
And more about actively engaging.
Yes. Actively engaging with difficulty in a way that fosters well-being.
So it's definitely not just about toughing it out. It sounds like there's a real element of proactive engagement, almost like an internal toolkit we can learn to use.
That's a good way to put it.
But then if we shift perspective, say, look at it sociologically, the focus moves from the individual to the group, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sociology looks at the ability of a community, a neighborhood, a city, maybe even a whole society to withstand external pressures.
Like what kind of pressures?
Oh, anything really.
Yeah.
Environmental disasters, economic downturns, social upheavals, and recover from those shocks. What's particularly insightful here, I think, is the recognition that it's not just about the people.
Meaning?
A community's resilience can also depend on its infrastructure, its natural resources, even shared technologies, these more-than-human elements, as some call them.
Right, the physical and structural stuff matters, too.
And the goal isn't always just to get back to how things were before.
Yeah.
There's this concept of bouncing forward.
Bouncing forward.
Yeah, suggesting communities can adapt and maybe even create new, more sustainable ways of functioning after a crisis. One sociological framework for understanding individual resilience within a community emphasizes 4 key things. A sense of being grounded, a feeling of belonging, a shared system of beliefs, and a culture of benevolence or, mutual aid.
That makes a lot of sense. Being, belonging, believing, benevolence.
Exactly. And when you scale that up to societal resilience, it touches on how a society maintains its core values and structures when challenged, which inevitably has political dimensions.
How so?
Well, questions like who actually has the capacity to adapt, what kind of support systems are in place or maybe aren't in place, that can create inequalities in resilience.
Right. So psychology looks inward at personal resources. Sociology looks outward at collective strength and resources. And then anthropology adds another layer.
Precisely. Anthropologists tend to view resilience as something deeply embedded in the specific history and cultural context of a group.
So very context specific.
Very. It's not just about individual traits or community structures in isolation, but the dynamic interplay between them. They emphasize the social connections, shared practices, collective strategies people develop over time.
Right, the lived reality of it.
And they even talk about idioms of resilience.
Idioms of resilience, what does that mean?
It refers to those unique, culturally specific ways that different groups understand, talk about, and, well, demonstrate their ability to adapt and thrive despite difficulties.
So what looks like resilience in one culture might be totally different elsewhere.
Exactly. It really highlights that our cultural background profoundly shapes our experience of adversity and how we cope.
Idioms of resilience, that's a powerful idea. It really drives home how culture isn't just a backdrop. Okay, and then we have the AI perspective, which seems like, well, a completely different lens again.
It is a very different approach, yeah. AI analyzes massive amounts of data, things like social media activity, physiological responses from wearables, economic indicators.
During and after challenges.
Exactly. The goal is to identify patterns and maybe predict who or what might be more resilient based on these data points.
Does it find anything surprising?
Well, one potentially interesting insight is its ability to detect subtle early indicators of stress or recovery that a human observer might just miss.
Okay, that could be useful.
But, and this is a big but, it's crucial to remember that AI, in its current form, doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't feel emotions or really understand human motivations.
It just sees patterns.
Right. It sees correlations between certain data points and successful recovery, but it can't truly grasp the lived experience of overcoming hardship or the meaning someone gives to that process.
So it's analyzing the brushstrokes without understanding the art.
That's a perfect analogy. It sees the what in the data, but misses the why and the how it feels. So while AI can be a powerful tool for spotting trends, it can't capture the human essence of resilience.
Right. It's missing that deeply personal, emotional core. Okay, so if we were to kind of distill the essence of these different perspectives, what are the key takeaways?
Okay, so from psychology is the individual's capacity for adaptation, the fact that resilience can be learned, and maybe even the potential for that post-traumatic growth.
Right. Learnable adaptation, potential growth.
From sociology, it really highlights the importance of strong community networks, shared resources, and that ability to not just recover, but perhaps to evolve, to bounce forward.
Community resources, bouncing forward. Got it.
And from the AI perspective, it's about identifying those data-driven patterns, behavioral and physiological, that correlate with successful adaptation, even if it doesn't understand the why.
Patterns, correlations, data. Okay, that gives us a really solid foundation. Now, let's maybe look back. History is filled with examples, right? Individuals, societies facing immense challenges. What can these stories teach us?
Oh, history is absolutely full of compelling examples. I mean, think about Nelson Mandela.
27 years in prison.
Exactly, 27 years. Yet he emerged with this unwavering commitment to reconciliation and justice. What's particularly insightful there is the disciplined mental fortitude he cultivated in isolation.
How does he do that?
Maintaining a sense of purpose, engaging in mental exercises, things that kept his spirit alive, or consider Anne Frank.
Hiding under constant threat.
Yet her diary reveals this remarkable capacity for hope, a belief in the inherent goodness of people, even then. It shows how maintaining a positive outlook, even in the darkest times, can be a powerful form of resilience itself.
Hope as resilience.
And then there's Louis Zamperini. Prisoner of war, survived horrific torture, demonstrated incredible physical and mental toughness, never gave up hope of going home. His story really highlights the power of sheer determination.
Unbelievable will.
And more recently, Malala Yousafzai survived that brutal attack just for advocating for girls' education.
And became a global voice.
Right. She channeled her trauma into this global platform for change. Shows how adversity can sometimes fuel an even stronger sense of purpose.
These individual stories are incredibly powerful, inspiring.
Yeah.
But it's not just individuals, is it? Entire societies have shown remarkable resilience, too.
Absolutely. Look at, say, the aftermath of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake and fires. Immense destruction, yes. Yet the community rapidly organized, shared resources, and just began the massive task of rebuilding. It really illustrates the critical role of social cohesion, collective action in disaster recovery.
People coming together.
Or think about the Great Depression. families, communities, they developed ingenious ways to survive widespread poverty, sharing food, bartering skills, creating informal support networks.
Resourcefulness born of necessity.
And what's interesting is that communities with a history of facing economic hardship often had more robust informal support systems already in place. Suggests that past challenges can actually build collective resilience for the future.
Like practice, almost.
In a way. Even ancient societies faced huge climate shifts, environmental challenges, their ability to adapt farming, migrate, develop new tech that demonstrates long-term societal resilience, not just bouncing back, but transforming while keeping core parts of their culture.
Adapting over generations.
And you see it in leaders, too, like Julius Caesar, rebounding after military defeats, analyzing failures, adapting strategies, or Viktor Frankl, whose experiences in concentration camps led to that profound insight about finding meaning, even in suffering, as a source of strength.
Logotherapy.
Yeah. Exactly. And then there's scientific research like Emmy Werner's famous Kauai study. It showed how even kids facing multiple risk factors could thrive if they had stable support and a sense of competence. Adversity doesn't automatically mean negative outcomes.
That's crucial. Support makes a difference.
It really does. Even something seemingly small, like introducing solar-powered lamps in impoverished communities that shows a practical technological resilience, overcoming limitations, improving quality of life.
These historical examples really bring the whole concept to life, don't they? They show that incredible adaptability and strength. If we were to pull out some key insights from these specific examples.
Okay, let's try. For Mandela, maybe it's the power of inner strength and purpose, even during prolonged isolation. For Anne Frank, perhaps the resilience of hope and the human spirit against extreme threat.
Hope again.
The San Francisco earthquake really highlights that crucial role of community-led recovery, social cohesion.
Community action.
The Great Depression demonstrates the power of resourcefulness and those informal social supports.
Making do together.
Agricultural communities often teach us that repeated exposure to, let's say, manageable challenges can build resilience for bigger crises later on.
Learning through experience.
And maybe someone like Frida Kahlo, channeling lifelong physical suffering into powerful art. That shows how creativity can be a vital mechanism for coping and finding meaning in adversity.
Creativity as resilience. Fascinating. It's striking how diverse the expressions are, yet they all point to that fundamental human drive to persevere. Okay, let's shift focus again, maybe inward this time. Let's explore the biology, the genetics behind resilience. What's actually happening inside us?
Right, this is where we see that intricate interplay between our minds and our biology. Our brain, obviously, is central. Different regions are involved, the cerebrum for higher-level thinking, the cerebellum for coordination, the brainstem for basic functions, the limbic system for emotions.
All working together.
Exactly. And a key system involved is the HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Think of it as our body's stress thermostat. It releases hormones like cortisol to help us manage challenges and restore balance, or homeostasis. Other hormones like testosterone and DHEA and neurotransmitters like neuropeptide Y or NPY also play roles in modulating our stress response and promoting resilience.
So it's a chemical response too.
Very much so. And interestingly, individuals who show greater resilience often display enhanced activity in their prefrontal cortex.
The planning and control center.
Right, responsible for things like planning, decision-making, emotional regulation. And at the same time, they tend to show a less pronounced reaction in the amygdala.
A fear center.
Exactly, the brain region associated with processing fear and threat. And then, underpinning a lot of this is neuroplasticity.
The brain's ability to change.
Yes, its remarkable ability to reorganize itself, form new neural connections throughout life, learning new skills, adapting to new environments. Those are everyday examples of neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
And that adaptability is absolutely fundamental to resilience.
So our brain isn't fixed, it's constantly adapting. That's hopeful.
It really is.
So it's a complex dance of brain regions, chemical messengers. What about our genes? Do they play a role? Are some people just born more resilient?
Well, just born is maybe too simple, but yes, absolutely. Resilience isn't solely determined by our experiences. There's a significant genetic component.
Okay.
Think of our genes as providing a kind of blueprint that influences how our bodies and brains respond to stress. Resilience is what we call a complex trait.
Meaning multiple factors.
Yes, it's influenced by multiple genes interacting with each other and with our environment. Researchers have identified several genes that seem associated with different aspects of stress response and resilience.
Can you give an example?
Sure. The serotonin transporter gene, often called 5-HTT, it's involved in regulating mood. Variations in this gene can affect how efficiently serotonin, the neurotransmitter linked to well-being, is regulated.
Right.
Similarly, genes like FKBP5 are part of our body's stress response system, influencing sensitivity to cortisol. Others like BDNF, which supports brain cell growth, CRHR1, involved in stress hormone production, OXTR, related to social bonding, and COMT, which helps regulate neurotransmitters. They've all been implicated.
Wow, quite a few. So how much influence do genes actually have?
Studies suggest genetic factors might account for, well, roughly 50% of the individual differences we see in resilience.
50%, that's substantial.
It is a substantial inherited influence. But, and this is really crucial, our genes don't operate in a vacuum.
The environment matters too.
Enormously. The field of epigenetics explores how our environment and experiences can actually alter how our genes are expressed.
How they're turned on or off.
Exactly. Turning certain genes on or off without changing the underlying DNA sequence itself. So, while we might have a genetic predisposition, our life experiences can significantly shape how those genes actually function.
So it's not just the genes we get, but how life influences those genes. That's a really important distinction. And you mentioned adversity itself can have a biological impact.
Yes. Early childhood adversity, for example, has been shown to lead to epigenetic changes in genes related to the stress response. This can potentially make individuals more vulnerable to mental health issues later on.
Like leaving a mark.
Kind of. Significant stress or trauma can even leave what some call molecular scars on our bodies, affecting various biological systems.
Yeah.
However, it's complex.
How so?
Interestingly, some studies have found a sort of paradoxical link. Certain types of early adversity might be linked to improved cognitive function or stress response later in life. Yeah, suggesting that maybe manageable challenges early on could, in some ways, prime us or prepare us to cope better later. It's not fully understood yet.
So our biology and genetics provide a kind of foundational layer, but it's a dynamic foundation, constantly shaped by experiences. If we were to quickly summarize the key biological and genetic players.
Okay. Neurobiologically, prefrontal cortex for regulation, amygdala for threat processing, hormonally, cortisol for stress management, maybe testosterone, DHEA, NPY offering support. Genetically, genes like 5-HTT, FKBP5 involved in neurotransmitters and stress response, and processes like neuroplasticity, brain adaptability, and the HPA axis regulating stress hormones are fundamental.
Got it. Okay, let's move on to another fascinating dimension, culture. The cultural landscapes of resilience. How does our background influence how we understand and experience this?
This is where we see incredible diversity. Human resilience just isn't a one-size-fits-all concept. It's deeply, deeply intertwined with shared values, beliefs, traditions, social norms, practices of different cultures.
So culture defines it, in a way.
It shapes how we build support networks, what skills are valued in tough times, even our fundamental beliefs about what it means to cope effectively. So yeah, a behavior seen as strong and resilient in one culture might be viewed quite differently in another.
Interesting.
Ultimately, it's the cultural group that, maybe consciously or unconsciously, defines what resilience looks like in their specific context. Cultural identity itself can be a powerful source of resilience, providing belonging, shared purpose, collective strength.
Right.
There's even the concept of cultural resilience, the ability of a cultural system itself to absorb disturbances, maintain its core identity, often drawing strength from its traditions and heritage.
And you mentioned idioms of resilience earlier.
Yes, those culturally specific ways of expressing and understanding positive adaptation. It's also important to remember much of the early resilience research came out of Western cultures.
So potential bias there.
Exactly. We need to be aware of potential cultural biases and how we even understand the concept.
So culture isn't just a backdrop. It actively shapes how resilience is understood, expressed, experienced. And anthropological perspectives really bring this out.
Absolutely. Anthropologists see resilience not just as an individual trait, but as this relational process embedded in history and culture. They look at the intricate web of social interactions, collective strategies, shared knowledge.
The whole system.
And often, they consider the human relationship with the environment that more than human resilience idea again. Furthermore, anthropology often offers a critical lens on, say, top-down resilience policies.
How so?
Questioning if they truly address local needs, sometimes highlighting how they might even inadvertently worsen existing inequalities by ignoring specific cultural contexts. They also pay close attention to the metaphors and narratives cultures use to frame overcoming hardship.
It sounds like resilience isn't just about individual grit, but very much about collective resources and cultural frameworks people draw on. Can you give some specific examples of how different cultural values might influence resilience?
Sure. In many East Asian cultures, influenced by philosophies like Confucianism, there's often a strong emphasis on perseverance, self-discipline, maintaining social harmony.
Okay.
This might manifest as, say, a greater tendency to endure hardship more quietly, prioritizing the group's well-being over individual needs.
Right.
For Alaska Native communities, their deep connection to cultural traditions, strong kinship ties, traditional knowledge of navigating harsh environments, those are vital sources of resilience against environmental changes and historical trauma.
Drawing on heritage.
In more collectivist societies generally, the emphasis on group solidarity and mutual support means individuals are maybe more likely to seek and receive help from extended family and community networks.
The network is key.
Across many cultures, spirituality and religious faith provide a powerful framework for coping, offering comfort, meaning, hope through practices and beliefs.
Meaning and hope again.
And for many indigenous communities worldwide, resilience is deeply rooted in their connection to the land, traditional ecological knowledge, cultural practices that have sustained them through generations of challenges.
It's fascinating how these deeply ingrained values shape responses and resources. Okay, let's turn to philosophy now. What insights do philosophical traditions offer us here?
Philosophy provides some really profound perspectives on navigating adversity, which is, central to resilience. Stoicism, for instance.
Control what you can control.
Exactly. It emphasizes accepting what we cannot control and focusing on our inner responses to external events. A key idea is viewing obstacles not just as hindrances, but as opportunities to develop virtue, inner strength.
Okay. Any others?
Objectivism, with its focus on reason and individual achievement, sees adversity as a chance to exercise our rational faculties, strive for self-improvement.
Reason as a tool.
Interestingly, both Stoicism and some Christian thought share an idea of finding a kind of joy in adversity. Not in the suffering itself, obviously, but in the opportunity it presents for growth, for developing character.
Growth through challenge.
Philosophically, the search for meaning in life is also deeply intertwined with resilience. Believing our lives have purpose, derived from our actions, attitudes, values, that can be a powerful anchor in tough times.
Like Viktor Frankl.
Precisely. Drawing from his horrific experiences, he famously argued that our primary drive is to find meaning, and that this pursuit can sustain us even in the worst circumstances.
Meaning as fuel.
More broadly, philosophical perspectives often suggest adversity reveals our true character, our potential. It pushes us beyond perceived limits and fosters what psychologists now call post-traumatic growth. That idea that we can emerge stronger. The old saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," echoes this.
So philosophy offers a framework for how to think about and approach adversity to foster resilience. What are some of the core philosophical ideas that relate most directly to this?
Okay, from Stoicism. Acceptance of the uncontrollable. Focus on inner response, viewing adversity as opportunity for growth and inner strength.
Acceptance, inner focus, opportunity.
Objectivism emphasizes reason, self-reliance in overcoming challenges, linking resilience to personal flourishing.
Reason, flourishing.
Existentialism, especially through Frankl, highlights the crucial role of finding meaning, even amidst suffering, as a foundation for resilience.
Meaning is key.
And a broader philosophical view underscores how our sense of purpose and our ability to learn and grow from challenges contribute to our overall resilience.
These philosophical insights offer timeless guidance, really. Okay, now let's consider how resilience changes across our lives. Is it fixed, or does it evolve as we age?
Definitely not fixed. It's a dynamic process. It unfolds and changes across the lifespan. Early childhood is absolutely foundational.
How so?
The quality of caregiving, stimulation, basic needs being met, secure attachment with caregivers, opportunities for play, all contribute to building a child's early capacity to cope with stress.
Setting the stage.
Interestingly, research suggests resilience tends to increase as we move into adulthood. Young adults might rely more heavily on social support networks when facing challenges.
Friends, partners.
Right. Whereas older adults often demonstrate greater resilience in terms of emotional regulation and problem-solving skills, drawing on a lifetime of experiences.
Wisdom, perhaps.
Perhaps. Even in very late life, individuals can show remarkable resilience, adapting to loss, finding new sources of meaning and connection. This really highlights the need for age-specific thinking when we talk about fostering resilience.
Tailoring support to the life stage.
Exactly. However, it's also important to acknowledge, as we touched on with biology, that early adversity can have long-lasting effects.
Right.
But the human capacity for what's called phenotypic plasticity, the ability to adapt our development in response to different environments, means overcoming challenges, especially with good support, can indeed lead to increased strength and resilience over time.
So we can still adapt and grow later.
Absolutely. There's even research looking at how experiencing and overcoming certain adversities can influence moral development, and how we perceive and react to adversity can shift with age, too. Like, younger adults might be more sensitive to negative social feedback than older adults.
So our resilience toolkit isn't static. It's constantly being shaped by experiences and our life stage. What are some key factors influencing resilience at different points?
Okay, quick summary. Early childhood, secure attachment, nurturing environment are paramount. Young adulthood, strong social support networks, often key. Older adulthood tends to draw on life experience, emotional regulation, perspective. Very late life, maintaining social connections, finding daily meaning contributes significantly.
It's fascinating how our resources evolve. Now let's touch upon something important: ethics. Are there ethical considerations around resilience we should be aware of?
Yes, definitely. There are important ethical dimensions. There's a growing field even called resilience ethics, prompting us to think about our responsibilities to each other and the broader systems we're part of.
Like in disasters.
Exactly. In disaster contexts, ethics emphasizes equitable aid, upholding dignity, prioritizing the vulnerable, protecting the social and natural environment during recovery.
Makes sense.
In professions with frequent moral challenges like healthcare, building ethical resilience is crucial to prevent burnout and maintain integrity. There's also the link between human and ecological resilience, raising ethical questions about environmental responsibility.
Right.
The concept of ethical resilience in decision-making encourages integrating moral principles with sustainability and the ability to withstand future challenges. But there's a critical ethical concern, too.
Which is?
That an overemphasis on individual resilience could potentially mask underlying systemic injustices.
How so?
By placing the burden of coping entirely on individuals without addressing the root causes of their adversity: poverty, discrimination, lack of opportunity, etc.
Right, blaming the victim, almost.
Potentially. There are also ethical debates around viewing resilience as a form of human enhancement, creating societal pressure to constantly adapt and thrive, even in unfair or harmful situations. So it's vital to approach resilience with a thoughtful ethical lens, ensuring it doesn't inadvertently perpetuate inequalities or excuse systemic failures.
So while resilience is generally positive, we need to be careful its focus doesn't obscure larger ethical issues or unfairly burden individuals. Okay, let's revisit the AI perspective briefly. How does AI interpret resilience, and what are those crucial differences between its understanding and ours?
Right. As we touched on, AI excels at analyzing huge data sets to find patterns and correlations associated with resilience. It could potentially predict who might be more vulnerable or recover faster based on lots of data points.
But the difference is understanding.
That's the fundamental difference, yes. AI operates on algorithms, statistical relationships. It can process information about emotions, analyze sentiment and text, recognize facial expressions, but it lacks the subjective, lived experience of those emotions. Exactly. It identifies patterns correlating with resilience, but can't grasp the internal states, belief, personal meaning that are so central to the human experience of overcoming adversity. For instance, AI might identify the strong social connections correlate with resilience.
But it doesn't understand the feeling of belonging.
Precisely. Or the emotional support those connections provide. Despite these limits, AI can be a valuable tool to augment our understanding, maybe identifying non-obvious factors or modeling complex systems. But it's essential it serves as a tool to inform our human empathy and critical thinking, not replace them.
So a powerful analytical instrument, but missing the human core of experience and meaning. What are the most significant distinctions, then, between how humans and AI understand resilience?
Okay, let's try to frame that. Humans understand resilience through lived experience, emotions, beliefs, cultural context. It's inherently qualitative, focused on well-being, meaning-making.
Subjective.
AI interprets resilience through objective data, quantifiable metrics, focusing on patterns of adaptation and recovery. Humans have a rich, nuanced understanding of emotions and their significance. AI only recognizes patterns associated with emotional expression.
Recognition versus understanding.
Our strengths lie in empathy, intuition, contextual understanding. AI excels at processing vast data, identifying complex correlations. But AI lacks consciousness, subjective experience, the ability to grasp qualitative data, all fundamental to human resilience.
That's a really clear way to frame the difference. Now, you mentioned our listener had some specific questions stemming from this AI angle. Let's dig into a few of those. For instance, what about the meaning behind human emotions like laughter and crying?
Right. From a human perspective, these are complex responses. They involve physiological changes, cognitive interpretation, sociocultural norms, often intentional expression. They carry personal significance, communicate internal states.
And then for AI?
For AI, currently, they're patterns in data. Acoustic patterns for laughter, physiological indicators for crying. There's no understanding of the subjective experience, the reasons, the intentions behind them.
Just data points.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about the fundamental purpose and origins of resilience itself? Why do we have it?
Well, the core purpose, from a biological evolutionary standpoint, is survival. The ability to adapt to challenges, cope with stress, recover from setbacks, all to ensure life continues.
Adaptation for survival.
Its origins are multifaceted, stemming from evolutionary adaptations favoring those who could overcome adversity, developmental processes in early life shaping stress responses, biological and psychological factors influencing coping, and social and cultural influences providing support and frameworks.
Nature and nurture, essentially.
A complex mix, yes.
Our listener also wondered about this idea. Could AI potentially create a world where humans always feel positive emotions?
The always happy scenario. While it might sound appealing at first glance, it's important to recognize that adversity actually plays a crucial role in developing resilience.
We need challenges.
It seems so. Facing challenges, learning from mistakes, overcoming difficulties, these are essential for building coping skills, fostering inner strength, developing a sense of competence. A life entirely devoid of negative emotions and challenges might actually hinder the development of true resilience.
Leaving us unprepared.
Exactly. Ill-equipped to handle the inevitable difficulties life throws our way.
That makes intuitive sense. You need to encounter challenges to learn how to navigate them. What are some key insights about resilience that you think are most important for humans to understand about themselves?
Okay. Maybe first, that resilience is not fixed. It's a dynamic capacity we can develop throughout life.
It's learnable.
Second, that strong social connections and effective coping skills are vital resources. We don't do it alone.
Connections and skills matter.
And third, that our mindset, our beliefs about ourselves, our ability to cope plays a really powerful role in shaping our resilience.
Mindset matters.
Dynamic, connection skills, mindset, got it. And the benefits of resilience at different levels, individual, community, society. Okay. Individually, greater resilience generally leads to improved mental and physical well-being, better stress management, a greater capacity to thrive despite challenges.
Better personal outcomes.
For communities, higher collective resilience means a greater ability to withstand and recover from crises, stronger social bonds, a more supportive environment for members.
Stronger communities.
And for society as a whole, a resilient populace contributes to greater stability, adaptability in the face of change, and a stronger capacity to overcome collective challenges like pandemics or climate change.
More stable, adaptable societies. Our listener also asked how resilience manifests in diverse, unique circumstances.
Right. The way it manifests is this complex interplay between an individual's internal resources, genes, personality, skills, and the specific nature of the adversity faced, plus the environmental and social context.
So highly individual and context dependent.
Exactly. What resilience looks like in one situation might be quite different in another. There's no single template.
And the idea of AI providing better logic for understanding big issues like life and death.
Well, AI can certainly analyze vast amounts of data related to these topics, maybe uncover patterns, offer new perspectives. But questions about the fundamental meaning of life and death often go beyond pure logic.
Into philosophy, spirituality.
Right, deeply personal considerations that current AI just can't address. Resilience, often, in the face of mortality, is tied to finding meaning and purpose in the life we do have.
Another tough question from the listener. Why might someone who shows resilience in one area still be capable of cruelty towards others?
That's a really important point. Resilience is about the capacity to overcome adversity in one's own life. It doesn't automatically equate to moral character or prevent harmful behavior towards others.
They're separate things.
Cruelty can stem from a complex mix of psychological factors, societal influences, lack of empathy, which are distinct from someone's personal coping capacity.
Okay. What if someone were born, hypothetically, with zero resilience?
It's hard to even imagine, really. Some basic level of adaptability seems essential for survival, but, hypothetically, such an individual would be extremely vulnerable to even minor stressors, likely struggle significantly with development, well-being. It probably wouldn't be viable.
Right. And what role does simply believing in human resilience play?
Believing in our own capacity for resilience and that of others in our communities can be incredibly powerful. It fosters hope.
Hope again.
It motivates us to persevere, encourages empathy and support for those struggling, and facilitates collective action against shared challenges. Belief can be a powerful engine.
Finally, the listener asked about why humor varies so much.
Humor. It's a complex, influenced by personality, culture, personal experiences, even coping mechanisms. For some, laughter is a significant way to relieve stress, maintain perspective, contributing to their resilience.
Humor as a coping tool.
Exactly. The fact that it's so diverse probably just reflects the incredibly diverse ways humans cope with and make sense of the world.
And just quickly touching on those other phrases. Leading where suggests the outcomes resilience enables after adversity. Different human circumstances emphasizes that context dependency again.
Right.
The intuition of resilience speaks to our sometimes instinctual coping. Reality of life includes adversity, making resilience necessary. AI's role in various situations is as that analytical tool. Physical with no resilience might mean extreme vulnerability. Freedom in belief highlights mindset's power. And why not always teach kids resilience involves complex educational debates, all reinforcing how multifaceted this is.
That's a really thorough exploration of those listener points. Okay, finally, let's talk about enhancement. How can we actively cultivate resilience in ourselves, in our communities?
Recognizing it's a skill we can develop is the first crucial step. Individually, several strategies have evidence behind them. Building strong, supportive relationships that provides a vital buffer against stress.
Connections. Developing effective coping mechanisms, problem solving, emotional regulation techniques equips us better.
Skills.
Cultivating optimism, a positive outlook, can shift perspective on adversity.
Mindset.
Finding meaning and purpose gives direction. Motivation.
Meaning.
Practicing self-care, attending to physical, emotional, mental well-being helps maintain resources.
Self-care.
Developing self-awareness helps understand our strengths, vulnerabilities, embracing change, adapting to uncertainty, essential, and reflecting on past experiences, successes, and failures builds lessons and confidence.
Learning from the past.
There's even that 7 C's of resilience framework. Competence, confidence, connection, character, contribution, coping, and control. Key elements to cultivate.
Okay, and at the collective level, for communities, societies.
Fostering strong community bonds,
Yeah.
creating supportive, equitable environments,
Yeah.
implementing pre-disaster preparedness measures, and crucially addressing those systemic inequalities we talked about, all contribute to greater resilience on a larger scale.
Systemic change, too.
And AI could potentially play a supportive role here, developing personalized resilience training, early warning systems, providing mental health resources, analyzing data to find effective strategies for different contexts.
AI as a potential tool for enhancement.
Potentially, yes, as a support tool.
So it sounds like there are concrete steps, both individual and collective, to strengthen our resilience, our ability to navigate life's challenges. If we were to summarize some key enhancement strategies.
Okay, individually. Focus on building strong relationships for support, develop healthy coping mechanisms for stress, cultivate optimism, find purpose and meaning, prioritize self-care.
Build relationships, skills, optimism, meaning self-care.
Collectively, focus on fostering strong community support, creating equitable environments, implementing proactive preparedness and response measures.
Community support, equity, preparedness.
And AI can offer tools for personalized support, risk identification, data-driven insights to inform our efforts.
This has been a truly illuminating deep dive into the very multifaceted nature of human resilience. It's so clear it's not one single thing, but this complex interplay of psychology, sociology, biology, genetics, culture, philosophy.
Really is all interconnected.
And while AI offers a unique perspective, a different lens, the very heart of human resilience seems to lie in those deeply human capacities. Emotion, connection, The search for meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as we all continue to navigate a world that seems to be constantly changing, understanding and nurturing this enduring human spirit feels more important than ever.
Yeah.
We really hope this exploration has provided you, the listener, with maybe a deeper appreciation for your own resilience and perhaps some valuable insights into how you can continue to cultivate it.
So as you go about your day, maybe consider what resonated most with you from our discussion. What aspects of resilience, whether it's that power of hope we kept coming back to, the strength of community, the sheer adaptability of our own minds, what stands out for you? And perhaps you'll find new ways to recognize and foster that incredible capacity, both within yourself and in the people around you.
This is DigitView.